harvested about half of the basil that we planted in our garden this year, which we probably planted a little bit too much. But we went out and got it and decided to start making some pesto. While we were thinking about making pesto, my daughter Hannah and I started thinking about all the great ways to eat it. We've already made bow tie pasta with pesto and chicken, and that was delicious. And now we're going to make a chicken sandwich. So she offered to make some French bread for me, which we're going to turn into the toast for our toasted grilled chicken sandwich with pesto. And I'll show you that in a little bit. But we're going to get started with our pesto. And we are doing a bulk recipe today, which would allow you to make enough pesto to freeze and store. We'll talk about how I store that. So the ingredients that you'll need to make our pesto will be 8 cups of basil, and we want you to tear the leaves off of the stem so you don't have chunks of stem in there, but a little bit isn't going to matter. You'll need walnuts. I'm using walnuts because we have somebody in our family who's allergic to pine nuts, and we've switched to walnuts. But truly, you can make it without the walnuts if you wanted to. You just add a little extra Parmesan. Just experiment with that a little bit. You'll need salt and pepper, whole cloves of garlic, some Parmesan Reggiano, and olive oil. I'm going to use our food processor today, so we'll use this for making the pesto, which I find really easy, especially when you go to stream the olive oil. But you can also make it in your blender if you have a big enough blender. Our blender is great for this in a smaller batch. In a larger batch, I do like to use the food processor, as we're doing today. So this recipe calls for 8 cloves of garlic, and I have rather large garlic cloves here today. So use your judgment. If I have 1 big clove, I'm probably going to count it as 2. So you just want to take the time to cut the end off, press it to release the paper, and then throw your garlic cloves in the bowl. I cut the end off, I give it a press, and then everything just slides right off the outside of it. Before we start mixing, I just want to review the quantities of each ingredient so that you can write this down. We're going to start with 1 1/3 cups of walnuts. And as I said before, you can substitute and use other nuts, or you can use more Parmesan. You can also use sunflower seeds if you'd prefer. We're going to use 1 1/3 cups of walnuts today. I'm going to use 8 cloves of garlic, which I've already cut apart and pulled the paper off. We'll use 8 cups of basil. We're going to put in 2 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon of pepper, and I'm going to stream 2 cups of olive oil into this recipe. I've already measured it out. And lastly, we're going to add 2 cups of the Parmesan. I love a good Parmesan shred for a Caesar salad, but for pesto, I just use the grated Parmesan that you can buy at the grocery store. So let's get started. You want to make a paste first, and I'm going to start that with my walnuts and garlic cloves. This recipe, as I said, calls for 1 1/3 cups of walnuts, and I found walnut pieces at the bulk food store, which is a great way to save some money because whole walnuts are more expensive. So 1 1/3 cups of these pieces, and the 8 cloves of garlic are going to go in here just to get it started to make a paste. Lock this down. That's what we're looking for. We're making it into a paste. The walnuts are chopped up very fine and the garlic is minced throughout. And to that I'm going to go ahead and start adding my basil. I'm also going to add my salt and pepper at this time. 2 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon of pepper. Give that a whirl. You may find that to get the leaves down in, you may have to pulse. It really goes all at once. I can see 1 leaf in here that didn't get pulled down in, so this will be a good time take your spatula and push everything down in. This is a very thick paste at this stage. Now most food processors have a cartridge that you can pull out the top. It'll allow you to have access to the inside. And that's how I'm going to stream my olive oil in. Use a good tasting olive oil. We use extra virgin olive oil. Get something that you like the flavor of because you really will taste it in your pesto. You want to slowly stream. Okay, at this stage we have something that's very soupy. I'm just going to one more time take my spatula and push this down inside and make sure that any paste that's stuck along the bottom, the garlic paste in the bottom, hasn't thoroughly mixed through. I'm going to push it down in and run it one more time before I add my Parmesan. Okay, 2 cups of Parmesan. We'll give that a whirl. And that's it. Perfect consistency. You want it to be able to be loose enough that if you mix it into your pasta or want to have it spreadable onto a sandwich, that it's loose, but definitely not runny. And you want to make sure that you have a good bind between the cheese, the basil, and the olive oil so that it doesn't look runny and oily separated. Sometimes when I make pesto, it turns a little bit brown, and if you want to prevent that, you can add a little bit of lemon juice. I like to use fresh squeezed lemons, but we didn't have any today, so I'm just going to throw a little bottled lemon juice in here to help it out. Another great tip is that when you make pesto, if you want to keep it fresh for making pasta that evening, put a layer of olive oil on top of it in the bowl, and that'll keep it from browning on top until it's time to use it. You just pour the olive oil off, or mix it through and toss it into your pasta, because sometimes you need a little extra anyway. But I'm going to add lemon juice to this because this I'm making to put into the freezer. Well, we are going to use a little bit today, but we're going to put most of it in the freezer. All right, I'm just going to give this one little whirl, and I'll show you how I store it. I like the addition of a little bit of lemon juice too, because it tends to be something that's a really strong flavor with all that basil and olive oil and cheese in there. This just brightens it up a little bit. So give it a try. Let me show you what it looks like. And it's a perfect consistency. There's a variety of different ways to store your pesto. The old ice cube trays are probably the easiest. There's enough olive oil inside the pesto itself that when it freezes and you want to pop them out, just giving it a twist, they'll come right out. I put them in a freezer bag at that point, and we just keep them in the freezer in the kitchen for whenever you need a cube. If you want to put it into pasta, it defrosts really quickly, 10 seconds in the microwave and you're ready to go, or just sitting on the counter in a bowl. You can toss that right into your pasta, spread it onto a sandwich. There are so many different ways that you can use it. Someone gave me these little containers at one point, and they're great too because you can put a lid on top of them, and you could pour a little bit of oil on top if you wanted to help prevent the browning. But this is great too because you can keep them in here until you need them, or you can pop them out and put them in a bag. So that batch of pesto made enough for us to fill one full ice cube tray and all of these little boxes that I had as well, which would probably just be the equivalent of 2 ice cube trays, but I could only find one. We're gonna pop these into the freezer. They'll be ready tomorrow to take out of the cubes and just go ahead and put them into the freezer in a freezer safe bag. And it also allowed us to have a little left over for tonight's chicken sandwich. We have been brainstorming about how to make this chicken sandwich today, and my daughter and I got really excited about the idea of making it on homemade bread. She's quite the baker. She's been baking since she was needing to stand on a step stool to reach the countertop, and she's really perfected the French bread recipe. You want to come say hi?
Hello.
This is Hannah, and Hannah is baking our family recipe of French bread that we've been baking for 20 plus years.
Yes.
Sound about right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you've already made it. It's mixed. And you want to show us what you're going to do to roll it out?
They've risen on the countertops. I mean, they're just ready to roll out now.
Sometimes technology defeats me, and we lost our audio in this segment. No idea how. But I wanted you to see how she rolls out her dough. She rolls it out very thin, but then we'll be rolling it up tight into a log. By rolling it up tight and folding her ends in, she's keeping the bread controlled so that when it rises, it doesn't get these big air pockets in it and then over rise. Once she gets it into the log, on the tray it goes, and then a few slits on top to make sure that the bread doesn't burst. While the bread's in the oven, I took the time to grill some chicken. This is our pasture-raised chicken that we raised here on the property this year. Cooking the breasts whole, I'll slice them in half when it's time to make sandwiches. Our bread's out of the oven, and I'm slicing it up so that we can grill it with a little olive oil. Make it nice and crispy. It's so fresh that it's hard to cut. Okay, we have everything ready. Our bread is out of the oven, and we actually sliced it and toasted it a little bit in the oven with some olive oil. I've sliced up some tomatoes. I have some delicious Cooper Sharp cheese to melt on top, and our grilled chicken is ready. I think what we're gonna do is put some pesto right on these slices, put our chicken on top, and pop it back into the oven to melt the cheese. Need a generous helping of pesto. That one looks like it'll fit. A little bit of cheese on top. Oh, that looks good. Thanks for joining us today as we made pesto. I hope you'll try it soon. If you're not growing basil in your garden, ask a friend if they have some extra, or find some at the grocery store or farmer's market. It's worth making and saving. We were thinking today as we were making our delicious chicken sandwich about all the ways that you can use pesto, and I had the kids help me brainstorm a list. And I thought we came up with a really great list. We were thinking about adding pesto to meatballs to improve that Italian flavor in your spaghetti. We were thinking about putting it onto a BLT sandwich, which we're very excited about making right now with all the great tomatoes in the garden. How about adding it to pasta with some seafood? That would be delicious. I think you could also put it on top of a pizza and use that as the sauce instead of a red sauce. You could put pesto on kebabs, you could make dips out of it. There's lots of ways that you can marinate foods in it. There's so many things to do with pesto. Give it a try, make some soon. Thanks for joining me, and hope you'll come back for some other great videos soon.